It's not just a game, it's not just a grass. Lawn Solutions Australia is the exclusive home of Australia's best sports turf varieties. For the world's best grasses like Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda and Sir Grange Zoysia, contact Lawn Solutions Australia at lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. Hello and welcome to episode 76 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's ongoing mission to answer that eternal question, just what draws people to this extraordinary game. Rod Murray's my name and I'm joined on the line by my colleague John Huggan, who's host of this episode. Huggy, welcome. A little bit of a departure for you in episode 76. Normally you bring more high-profile guests, but this is a chat with not only a golf figure but a personal friend. Tell us a little bit about Lindsey Garden.
Well, I've known Lindsey a long time, over 30 years probably. She played in the Scottish ladies amateur team back in the day with alongside the former Mrs. Huggan, who actually they played each other in the final of the Scottish ladies sometime in the late 80s. That's the only time I ever got my name on a national championship trophy. It's when my wife won.
You had to donate it to somebody else, Huggy, to get it onto something important. Lovely, yes.
But yeah, Lindsey, and then she went off. Fascinatingly, especially for hopefully for Australian listeners to this, she went off and caddied on the European tour for 3 or 4 years, and ended up working for Radar Riley, now of Sky Sports, but back then a tour player. And she was actually on the bag when Radar won the Australian Open,
which is one of
famously holding that massive putt on the last green. She was the one carrying his bag.
That's right, and it's a fabulous story to listen to her tell because it is one of the more memorable Australian Opens. You had, of course, Robert Allenby as an amateur doing extraordinary things. It was quite a remarkable time in golf, and Allenby nearly got the job done. When she went to do that, Huggy, there would not have been many women caddies, I wouldn't imagine, on the European tour.
No. I think she had a long talk with her father. I think at the time before he was keen to let her go. But I think she had a great time. She's now married to a guy I was at university with, John Garden. And far more recently, Lindsey is now one of the first women members of the Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers at Muirfield, and she played as a marker at the British Women's Open this year, when they had an odd number of people made the cut. She played in the third round and the fourth round as a marker. Which
is just extraordinary. She's been a part of some pretty important bits of history there, hasn't she? Because that Muirfield Open will be seen, I think, in years to come as a bit of a watershed moment. We know the controversy about Muirfield and women members. To be one of those members and then to get a start and to play in the last 2 rounds of an Open, even not as a competitor, that's a remarkable. You could not ever look forward in your life and see that happening, could you?
No. I mean, I grew up quite close to Muirfield, and I had a fair bit of experience of going there and playing there, and that seemed a long way off not that long ago. But they've made great strides. Give them credit.
Absolutely,
they've done it the right way. They've got about 20. They're going to have about 25 women very soon, I think. Other clubs haven't been quite so haven't quite played so fairly, but the Honourable Company, I think they deserve some credit for once in their lives. They've done it the right way.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, caddies often have the best stories to tell, Huggy. Women in golf always have interesting stories to tell, and this is a fascinating chat. So thanks for joining us today and looking forward to having a listen.
My pleasure.
Okay, welcome to the latest edition of the Thing About Golf podcast. My guest this time around is a little bit different in my experience in this podcast. Is an old friend of mine, carried me around in a few mixed foursomes back in the day when I could play a little bit. Lindsey Anderson, it was Lindsey Garden. Now, I still think of you as Lindsey Anderson, I'm afraid. Welcome to the podcast. And the first question is always the same. What was the thing about golf for you?
Thank you, John. So the thing about golf for me at the very, very start was my dad played, my brother played, I was going to play. So that's how it started.
He's an older brother.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, 2 years older than me. He played, my dad played. So if it was good enough for them, it was good enough for me. And I think probably now the thing about golf is, you know, here I'm sitting with you, John, as you say, old friend. Don't like the word old, but that's
Well,
the way
I'm
it is.
old. I don't know about you.
We both are. Is friendship. Made so many great friends over the years that, you still see, keep in touch with, and, what a great game that we can still, okay, the golf maybe doesn't look quite the same as it did back when we were a bit better, but it's still the same game that we're playing. And that's really, really special.
Yeah. I know you're from Tain in the Highlands of Scotland, which is up there, shall we say. I mean, a wee bit out the way. But was there any kind of discrimination is a strong word, but how did you find being a wee girl playing golf and obviously having some talent at it, which we'll get to in a minute? I mean, how did you fit in that world, if you like?
Yeah, so no discrimination whatsoever up in the Highlands, other than, you hate me for saying it, my dad, I suppose, because he worked all week and enjoyed going off, playing golf. The business that he had was a local business, and they used to have half-day closures back then on a Thursday. So he played golf on a Thursday afternoon, he played golf on a Sunday. And that's what he did, and that was his time, and it was mostly men, I suppose, that played. And there were definitely women. I think the women that played at Tain were quite formidable, shall we say.
I know what you mean.
And so Dad just kind of thought, no, it's not for you. That's the way these women are, that don't see you fitting into that. Anyway, he conceded and he said, right, okay, well, if you really properly stick at this and you get to a point where you never, as we called, fresh air, so miss the ball, I will consider it. So our house backed on to the school playing fields, and I spent, I think when I was 11, I spent that summer battling an old kind of hickory type club up and down the school playing fields. And then I came home and I said, right, that's it, I'm ready, no fresh air. And he said, okay, let me see. So
what was the attraction for you then? I mean, it gets to all of us,
Yeah.
And originally it was just it's just seeing the ball flying through the air, I think. It was for me. I mean, I just enjoyed that. I mean, what was it for you at the beginning?
I don't know. I played, it was the summer, I played hockey, I played badminton, I did athletics. So I played lots of winter sports. And then we had this 7-week holiday in the summer. We had this golf course in Tain, not much else.
Good golf course.
Yeah, not much else. So here's another sport that we can just add to the bag. So yeah. I mean, laugh about the ball going in the air because being Scottish and always playing links golf, the ball doesn't go that high in the air.
Well,
with me.
true enough. But I was like you though. I started playing on the little, the village I grew up in had a public park, a football pitch, and some area around about it. And I came up with an 18-hole course that zigzagged, all over the place. And one hole even went over the swings in the park.
Yeah.
I mean, there was all kinds of nonsense when I look back at it, but that sounds familiar or similar to what you did.
Absolutely. And I remember having a conversation with you about putting, about why my long putting, so lag putting, was so bad.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. And you said you were really good because you bowled with your granddad. And I said, but the practice putting green at Tain was tiny. So you never really got to practice a long putt. And the practice ground was really quite small. So I used to hit wedges and 9 irons all the time. And I was, but when I was a decent golfer, from kind of 80 yards in, I was quite deadly.
Yeah.
But yeah, not the lag putting.
When did it become clear that there was some talent there? And when did you start beating your dad and your brother, which I sense would be an important milestone? I
can't remember for sure when I started to beat them. So my initial target was, so the follow on from Dad not letting me join, did let me join, said no, he wasn't going to buy me any clubs until...
He's a hard man.
He is a hard man, I know. Yeah. So there was various clubs kind of lying around, and I think somebody bought me a 5 iron. And so I a bit savvy, like started 3 iron, a 3 wood and a putter, and trundled on with that. Dad said, when you get down to 3, I will buy you a set of clubs.
Wow.
So there
Quite a challenge.
there was the challenge.
At what age
exactly.
are you at this point?
And well, so that was when I was 12 and
Cool.
was a member. So I got down to 3. I was still, I think it was just before my 15th birthday. And I got down to that. I had got another couple of clubs that nice relations or whatever had bought me, but not Dad. So by that point I was lower than both my dad and my
I remember
brother.
passing my father, and it was, I quite enjoyed it, I must admit. I mean, I'm sure you did too, especially being a girl. I mean, I hate to put it like that, but the beating the boys would be something, was it not?
It was, but I think it was more knocking it past him off the tee was probably the best one. So that probably took
Now, how did he
a
react
little
to
bit
that?
longer. Do you know, I think he secretly loved it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
sure
there was
he would.
probably a bit of pride there.
Yeah. And you progress to the point where you're playing for, your country, the amateur level. I mean, talk me through that. I mean, what were the experiences and what were the players that you came up against that have now moved on to bigger and better things, if you like?
Yep. So it was great, because I did live up in the Highlands, and I had almost like a day's travel.
It'd be hard to get noticed, was it?
I think the good thing about golf then was, we knew exactly the tournaments that we needed to go and play in. Mm-hmm. The 36 hole things, the Scottish girls, all that sort of stuff. So from that point of view, it was clear you just had to go to them. You had to score well. You had to beat them in the match play events, and that was it. And to their credit, selectors or whatever else they did, they didn't shy away from me being from the Highlands, but it was a lot of travelling for us. It was that kind of extra day to get to anything and staying overnight. And it's funny, you look back now too about all the protocol that we've got and disclosures and things. And, I used to go to these events, I would get buses here, or my dad would drop me off and at a golf club, and I'd be staying a couple of nights with members, and nobody knew who they were from, but off we went, and they were great. They were great experiences, and, it was all great fun. So in terms of players, Catherine Imrie was definitely around a lot. So Fiona Anderson didn't go on particularly and do anything. Pam Wright, who did turn professional, Julie Forbes, turned pro, again, never really went to the US. Vary Mackay did. Janice Moody she's that wee bit younger than me, so I caught this sort of start of their careers, but obviously the biggest name is Katrina Beanie.
And how did you compare at that point? I mean, brag a little bit. I mean, what were you winning at that stage, and how did you compare with the ones that did go on? And was there ever any thought of turning pro?
No, I never seriously gave turning pro a thought. I think I always knew I didn't have it. That whatever it is, I don't think anybody's quite put their finger on it.
I can relate to that. I was the same.
But and way back then, whatever stage that would have been, you knew you had to go to the LPGA, you had to go to the US, and you had to be really, really good. And I only skirted around ever playing for Great Britain and Ireland. I never actually played. I made a training squad one year. So I think if you're not in Great Britain and Ireland and then going Curtis Cup and really being top within that, you were
never the
professional
best
career
player in any team, was that fair to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. But I went out number 6 in the singles a few times, and wagged the tail.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. And what was the biggest thing you ever won? You're having to think about that. That's not a good sign.
I don't know that I really won anything. I lost in the final of the Scottish at Lossiemouth.
Who did you beat? Who lost? Who beat you in the final again?
She was Shirley Huggan. Back then,
I
Shirley
remember
Lawson.
her.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's move on.
And that was probably the closest I ever got to sort of winning a national event. But county sort of stuff, and I remember I never won the St. Rule Trophy, but I hold my second shot on the 15th for a 2, and
At the old course.
At the old course, yeah. And I remember at the time, so this is going back to the set of clubs. Ping in those days gave, if you were +1 or better, Ping would give you a free set of irons. And I hold my second shot, and then that brought me down that day to +1.
Right.
And I got my free set
There
of
you
Ping.
go.
So
There you go. Right, enough of this playing nonsense.
Exactly.
I'm far more interested in your caddying experiences. What in the God's name made you decide to be a caddy on the European tour in the first place?
So Fanny Sunison was caddying at the time. She was on Faldo's bag.
Right.
She just moved on to that. And then there was a lot of intrigue around that. And at that point, I'd finished my sports management degree, and I was a kind of interim job, if you like, at Ryder Golf Manufacturing.
Oh, yeah.
And they were making the golf bags for wherever the Ryder Cup was going to be that year. They were green leather golf bags. And Willie Aitchison, who was the caddy master, was coming in.
And he caddied here at Muirfield, where we are right now. He caddied for Trevino when he won here in 72.
He did, exactly. And Willie was giving them some, pointers and tips and feeling the weight of the bag and the balance, all that sort of stuff. And he was still doing a little bit of caddying and was kind of caddy master on the European tour. And I just said to Willie one day, I fancy that. Can you sort a bag for me? I could come on holiday. He was mortified and he said no, but each time he came in, I said, go on. And he got me a bag, Portugal. It was up just a course at Lisbon it was. And I went out and I caddied, and we played with Andrew Oldcorn, and he said, I'm looking for a caddy. If you want to come and do this, here you go, here's a bag.
So you started with him? Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Right. How did your family / parents react to this? Because without delving too deeply into stereotypes here, it's quite a life for a woman. I mean, it's hard enough for a man, but there's certainly compromises and certainly where you can stay and all that kind of stuff. As a woman, I mean, how did they react to that, and how did you handle it all?
My mother was mortified.
Yeah.
I think my dad was probably quite envious, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think most people were, but I suppose as with a lot of things, if I'd made up my mind, I quite fancy doing it all. I just focused on the positive. 21, 22.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So I just focused on the positive of it.
Well, if I'd been your dad, I'd have been a wee bit concerned. I'd have wanted some reassurances on a few fronts before, but obviously you're old enough to do whatever you want. But, I can see why they would be a wee bit worried.
Yeah. We were outnumbered.
Yeah.
But I have to say, all your concerns that you would have had as a dad did not, they didn't come to anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. I had a great time.
Right. Well, talk me through. I mean, who did you work for? And tell me about some of the travelling. I mean, every caddie's got travel stories. Billy Foster in particular is very good on that stuff. Run me through the list of players that you worked for.
Okay, so Andrew Oldcorn and was
he wouldn't be the easiest guy to caddy for, by the way, would he?
No, but so they go in two categories for me, I suppose, players. So lots of them are quite fiery and quite feisty, but they either take responsibility for the bad shots or the stuff that hasn't gone well, or they don't.
Yeah.
And I don't mind feisty and I don't mind fiery. It was when it was my fault that was the harder sort of stuff.
This is when it's not your fault, but they're blaming you.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's the kind of harder bit. So Andy O'Connor, or Bagpuss as he was called.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. He's my foursomes partner in amateur days, by the way. So
there we go. He was fine. I think, honestly, when they had a woman on the bag, there was an element of reining it in. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I've spoken, so kind of moving on who else I worked for. So Howard Clark, I picked up his bag well into that sort of first season. Yeah. And Fanny Sunison had worked for him before moving to Faldo's bag.
But he was notoriously grumpy.
Yes,
he was.
He was.
Howard would tell you that, I'm sure.
And he has. I've met him subsequently, to caddying, and bless him, he was apologetic and said, he looks back on it and he's mortified, and we spent a lot of time chatting, and it was lovely. It was great, and he's talked about just actually it was horrible for him, the sort of stuff that was going on in his head as a player. And I think that played out for him, because what a fantastic golfer. And he did have a great career, but talent-wise, he should have had should have had a better career, really. And he was somebody that would look to pass the blame.
Did you learn any new swear words, or did you know them all already?
I'm not sure that I did learn any new ones, to be honest. No, I don't think I did. No, I don't think so.
But that's a pretty high level. I mean, Howard Clark's Ryder Cup player, multi-tournament winner, what kind of one half a rung down from the Faldo, Lyle, Seve group. I mean, you're caddying at a pretty high level there. I mean, he's a potential tournament winner every week. You've gravitated, you must have been reasonably good at it then.
Well, I would like to think I was okay. I think some caddies overstate the role of the caddie and how much they influence and how much they've impacted on a win, perhaps. Because I think a lot of the time it's just being in a good place and being quite a positive mindset and quite calming in a way too, and so that if you recognise if they need to be spoken to or not, or do you just leave them to let off steam. It's not that many players that need help with lines and such like. I think a lot of caddies will tell you that they do, but these guys, they're so good. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, I go back and forward on how important a caddie is, and I think that there's basically three things. Correct me if I'm wrong here. That you need to be a good caddie. You need a strong back. You need an ability to count, and you need a personality that's compatible with the player. And I think the third one is obviously the key to it all. I mean, you got to make them, as you say, feel comfortable and able to play their best golf. But I'm not sure there's much more to it than that.
No.
As I say, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I would agree, but at any time you can be asked something, so you do need, you absolutely need to know what's going on, and if they might just suddenly say to you, I've got a 6 in my hand. Is it definitely a 6? And you've got to be able to pretty quickly, with conviction, say yes. But equally recognising if you really do think it's a 5, am I going to say 5 or say to them it's a good one, or however you want. Well,
there must have been times where you got that right and you got that wrong then.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
run me through a couple of them.
So the best ever. So I caddied for Wayne Riley, Radar, as we all know him.
I think he deserves a medal for that. By the way.
Well, he was great. I loved caddying for Radar. What a personality, what a character, and what a talented golfer. And I caddied for him down in what was the Australasian Tour, really. Then down in Australia, which was great fun. But when I got down there, we had to make our own yardage books.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Whereas in Europe, we bought these books each week, and caddies would go and get them. So they were all sort of made for us. So off I went with, I got a wheel and lots of little notebooks to draw. And of course, I didn't realise how bad my art was. But, when I'm trying to draw greens and bunkers and get them in the right place and put any breaks and borrows and things in. Anyway, so I think I was 3 weeks in to caddying for Radar down in Australia, and I can't remember exactly which course it was now, but I can still visualise the whole. And I'd drawn in some trees, and I'd put yardage from these trees. And for the life of me, when we were out there this day, I couldn't see the tree, and I kept looking at the yardage. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't see the tree that I needed for the yardage. And I don't know whether this was wise of me or not, but I did say to him, I really don't think this is right, but and he said, well, we'll go with it. Anyway, off he went. And of course, it's soaring through the air. Probably shouldn't be admitting to this. There were a few people standing behind the green, and I know caddies are meant to shout for, but there was no way I was shouting for. I was really hoping for a foot on there as it's gathering pace, and so it stops, over the back of the green. But thankfully, it wasn't a bad miss. It was fairly flat. There was a bit of long grass, but of course, caddies being caddies, the hole before was fairly close. As soon as they see a ball pitching over the back, they're up green side with their arms out to the side like aeroplanes, signalling back down. Nice airmail, Lindsay.
Right, yeah.
So you get it as much from the caddies as you do from the players. And I thought there and then, oh my Lord, I'm down here in Australia, 3 weeks in, I'm going to get the sack by the end of this round, and I'm going to have to find another job.
Yeah.
Anyway, bless them, he didn't, and won the Australian Open 2 weeks later. So happy days.
Talk to me about that. I mean, the audience for this podcast will be well interested in the week at the Australian Open on the winning bag.
Yeah.
Where is it? Royal Melbourne?
Royal Melbourne, yeah. Composite course.
Best place.
Well, I would love to go and actually play it. So that's well and truly on my bucket list. So it was it's a huge deal for Australians, the Australian Open. There was lots of talk, and I wasn't really used to all of that, I suppose. First time down there about it, being a major, and it's just so important to them. And of course, very quickly realised what a great golf course Royal Melbourne is. So when I was down there as well, Radar had said, look, it's far too hot here. I'm not having you carrying a big bag. I carried a full-size bag in Europe, but he didn't want me with a full-size bag.
What, Radar in gentlemanly gestured shook?
Absolutely. Goodness. So off we went he was ping player, off we went to the Ping warehouse, whatever it was, and had this little bag. So not great publicity for Ping, but there we go.
Right.
It was there. And it was the sort of big shootout with Robert Allenby, and he was amateur at the time. Anyway, we get to the last day, and there was various people. Roger Davis was kind of up there. I'm trying to think who else was sort of making a move. No. Allenby was in the group ahead of us, so we could see what his score was. And we get to the 14th hole, and it's all starting to play out now, and can see that we, as all good caddies say, were really in with a shout. And Radar was just walking quicker and quicker and quicker, and I could see that he was just not getting agitated. It wasn't anything, he was still hitting the ball well, still not really holding that many putts. And I was recognising, a bit like what I was saying to you earlier about recognising the moment that you need to say something, you need to sort of do something. I'm frantically trying to think, I need to say something, but what's going to be a calming thing to say rather than something that I'm going to, get a scalp on the head or whatever. And so I'm sort of trying to keep up. And I said, look, we're getting down to the wire here. This could be really, really special. How about we just slow down a little bit and make sure that we savor it and remember it? Yeah. And, so that was what came to my head as being something that might not sort of prompt a reaction that wasn't positive. Yeah. Anyway,
he's hyper at the best of times.
Well, he is. But, and he did, to his credit, off we went. And then I should really know the holes really well. And I can't remember if it's 15 or 16 is a par 3. And then on the practice days, there's, I suppose it's a kind of almost like a kidney shape green. And there's a massive bunker front left. And so the front of the green for a left-hand pin is about 10, 12 up the green because of this massive bunker. Yeah. And he'd said to me on the practice, so and I'm, with my homemade yardage book, which I still have actually. And he'd said, the flag will be back left on the last day. I don't want a yardage to, I don't want that front over the bunker. I'm going to play middle of the green.
Right.
So I'm doing as I'm told. We get round there. And so I read out my yardage, front, flag. No, I want the flag. So, okay,
Make
here we
mind
go.
Up. Yeah.
Here we go. And I kind of looked at him, didn't really say very much, but kind of pulled that face. Are you sure? And yeah, absolutely. So, he went at it and hit it beautifully, and it was all fine, and on we moved. And then we get a hole on, and Allenby was starting to make birdies, and so 17's a par 5. Knew that was, and it was downwind, so knew that there was a birdie opportunity, and I'm sort of saying, come on, let's just get this tee shot away and give ourselves a chance. And I didn't say that Allenby's an amateur, and you kind of got this in the bag, but as a caddy, I'm definitely thinking
he was a pretty special amateur, by the way.
Well, but in terms of the prize money, it was going to be radars.
There you go.
And I'm a caddy. I'm thinking about
You're
my
thinking the
10%,
money.
exactly. Right. And he obviously could tell, and he said, "I want to win this. I'm not coming second, amateur or anybody." So birdied from nowhere, 17, and holed a monster putt on 18. And he was.
How long was it?
Oh gosh,
because this is famous in Australian golf. This putt,
Oh, is it? Oh, I don't know how long.
It
must be. 25, 30 feet. It must be.
Oh,
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, it's not ridiculous then. But it's on the last hole. Fair.
It was pin high. It was the right club, which is good from a caddie's point of view. And I remember having a conversation about, and trying to gauge how fired up he was, and that's. And I suppose going back again about what you said about what caddies can do, that can be quite hard. Yeah. To and look at a lie and go, is that a flying lie or is it not? And where the adrenaline is taking you. Yeah. And he just not long moved to the long putter.
Right.
So he's running about this green with this big long putter, kind of, and it was just so special. It was amazing.
Did you read the putt at all?
No, I never read the greens with radar. I mean, I suppose sometimes he would maybe just ask for kind of affirmation of his decision, but no, he did it all.
And did you get your 10%? What was? Can you tell us what the figure was?
I can. So he won 126,000 Aussie dollars, and I got 12,600 Aussie dollars.
Very nice.
Yeah.
What did you spend the money on?
It got banked for quite a long time.
Oh, how dull!
I know.
Goodness me.
Well, because
that's your Presbyterian Scottish upbringing,
wasn't it? Well, because straight after that's when they had the Johnny Walker World. I can't even remember what it was called, and so that was the last qualifying event in Jamaica. Right. So off we went to Jamaica.
Right. Okay.
Happy days. The week before Christmas. So this my first ever trip to Australia just got better and better, and came back on the IMG charter from Jamaica, back with Nick Faldo and whoever else was on that flight, and all the IMG, and I thought I was the bee's knees.
Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda means less work and more play. Tough by name and by nature, this turf variety, supplied exclusively by Lawn Solutions Australia, is the perfect choice for your home lawn. With superior drought tolerance, speedy recovery and toughness, Tiff Tough really is the smart grass. For more information and to find your nearest accredited supplier, head to lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au.
Well, there's a social side to being a caddy, I'm sure. I mean, are there any tales from, bars, nightclubs that you can share with us? Now that you're a very staid married woman, I'm sure John won't listen to this.
Well, so the night of the win at the Australian Open, Radar was pretty good mates with Dermot Brereton, who a lot of your listeners will know was Hawthorn, which is Aussie rules football.
Right.
Of course, I had no idea about Aussie rules.
Neither.
I had no idea who Dermot Brereton. Anyway, he was walking round with Radar, a mate, and I could see that there was obviously a fair bit of interest, certainly from the female community with Dermy. I think he maybe had a mullet actually when I think back now, but anyway. And so we were in Melbourne, and he owned a nightclub in Melbourne. So this little entourage of Radar's friends and some other players and some other caddies. So it was, right, we're going to go on to this nightclub. And of course, blokes maybe don't think about this. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking particularly great. I've got my caddying trainers on, whatever jeans I had on, and my Heineken caddies t-shirt, which, looking great.
Yeah.
And off we went to the nightclub, and we got ushered in the VIP side, and all these women that were all glammed up are kind of looking over going, how's she getting in? But why would you want to go into that nightclub looking like that? But it didn't hinder me in any way.
2 or 3 drinks in, you wouldn't even remember that.
Well, I don't know that. I do remember an awful lot more. I do remember, so this was my first exposure to Australian culture, and I do remember, and it wasn't a caddie, but some bloke going up to a young lady that had quite a low top on and felt inclined to pop his face into her cleavage and say, "You're looking good, sweetheart." That certainly opened my eyes.
Interesting approach. Yeah.
Yep.
Did it work?
I quickly headed off in the other direction. That sent me off into blind panic.
Yeah. Was that the first tournament you'd ever won as a caddie?
No. I was on Brian Marchbank's bag when he won the Equity and Law Challenge.
Royal Mid-Surrey?
Yes.
So tell me about that.
I don't know. I can remember an awful. So I think I seem to remember.
It was only a 36 hole thing.
It was a 36 hole, and I think there was a special format to it. I think it was a kind of birdie chase.
It was a points thing.
Yes,
wasn't
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, that doesn't count. Come on.
Well, it was good fun. He was shooting lots of birdies. So that was my first win. And so the Australian Open really was the only win.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, something to look back on. I mean, especially now. I mean, you think, God, I mean, did I really do that? Is there a sense of that about it?
Yeah, it was just great to be part of that and share just the excitement and that coming down the stretch and looking a little bit at scoreboards and knowing what you've got to do, but not getting ahead, and staying in the moment and, just one shot at a time.
Do you think it made you a better player, seeing golf at that level?
I think my way around the golf course differently. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Not always before the shot has been struck, but yeah, I do think about it. You think about where you want to leave yourself a bit more rather than, before I would just kind of hit it and go, oh, I wish I hadn't left that out right or whatever. No, definitely. And another time I was caddying at Woburn for Scottish guy Peter Smith, and he was just going out early for a practice round, and so we're standing on the first tee, and then we could hear chink chink of some clubs. So another player was coming, looking to sort of join up, and it was Seve, which was pretty special. And Peter would admittedly say that his sort of short game wasn't his best, chipping around. Well, who better to get a lesson? Yeah. So of course I took that moment to kind of, when he was sort of talking to Peter about my abiding memory about Seve was his knees. When he was in bunkers, his knees were so flexed. He always had his legs really, and you could see him sort of bouncing up and down. And it was the same for all sorts of shots around the greens was, I think he was kind of saying to Peter, you stand so upright, you're never going to do anything, just, so I would kind of pull out a wedge and sort of just.
You think Seve?
Yeah. So that was it. And what a lovely, lovely man. He gave Peter so much time on that practice round. You could, when he teed it up on short hole, well, and any tee shot really, and he would say, so why have you gone to that side of the tee? What are you thinking? What are you seeing? Yeah. And he just wasn't, he wasn't selfish about his knowledge and experience. He was just so happy to share it with so many people, which was fantastic. Yeah.
What other big name players did you come up close to? as a caddy? You must have seen most of them. Caddying for Howard Clark, he would get some good draws, I would have thought.
Yeah, certainly Europe. So there wasn't a huge amount of Americans would come over. I only caddied one Open, and that was Peter Smith.
Where was that?
That was Birkdale.
What year?
Oh no, it was Lytham. Sorry, it was Lytham.
All right.
Yeah.
Easy to forget.
I know.
Yeah. What year would that be?
Early 90s. Can't remember which year it would be.
96 was Lytham. Tom Lehman, the one before that. 88 was Sevy's. That would be the previous one.
Okay, so no, it must have been Birkdale then. It must have been.
It's easy to get those things mixed up, Lindsay.
Do you know,
the one Open you caddied in, and you can't even remember the golf course.
I can't. I'll tell you why I can't remember. Because you didn't get, as a caddy, you were just in. You didn't get near the clubhouse. You didn't get, and it just he didn't make the cut. And
things have changed a bit since then.
Yeah. And it was. I wasn't really meant to have been caddying for him. It was the week before at the Scottish was when I stopped working for Howard.
What happened there?
That was a difficult round. We were drawn with Faldo, and Fanny was on the bag, and there was a rain delay, and we came back out, and I was getting the brunt end for Marshall putting up a quiet please sign, which caused a reflection in the puddle that was close to Howard's ball, which caused distraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see how you would get the blame for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I felt that was maybe time to move on. So
it was your decision, was it?
It was my decision.
Howard?
I popped the clubs in the back of the Ferrari and I said, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to be at the Open next week.
That was a big thing to give up the Open.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't do that anymore. You know, being on the end of that sort of level of blame, it was too contrived. And as I said, to his credit, he recognised that and was very apologetic.
So you were making a living at this. I mean, you could have kept going. I
could have, yes.
I mean, what sort of level of income, if I can ask you that? It's your business, really, but what money were you making?
Gosh, hard to. Well, so the 12.5 Aussie dollar, 1,000 Aussie dollars I got, that would have been what, 6,000-7,000, you know, for that week.
What was your normal rate?
So I think I was getting
deals.
Yeah, exactly. And so from a travelling perspective, I was always paid quite well, and I took the decision that I would spend my wage on a flight and on somewhere decent enough to stay, rather than, you know, so I wasn't one of those caddies that was in an old banger driving from, I never did that. So
that's a pity. You would have enjoyed that. Well, maybe not.
No, maybe not. Maybe not. So, so I was quite lucky. And I think I was maybe getting paid 300, 350 a week. And then, well, we got back then, players that I worked for, it was 10% of a win, 7.5 top 10, and 5% of anything else.
Right. So it's pretty standard.
Yeah.
And what brought it to a close for you? When did you stop and why?
So I did 3 seasons. And I set out really only to do one season as
just as an adventure, really.
Well, I mean, people go off on gap years, and do worthy building, help build schools and toilets.
Yes.
Mine took a different sort of route, shall we say. So I ended up doing 3 seasons. I think largely because, you know, going down to Australia was just such great fun, and then, you know, and I came back and I sort of finished off really working with Radar for that season. And I knew then it was time, and I thought I probably could play a little bit more golf in and around it. And you really can't. I mean, we used to get fined if you got caught putting on the putting green or chipping and all that sort of stuff. So, I missed playing. Radar and I played in the Sunningdale foursomes. That season, which was great fun to do. We won one round and then sadly lost in the second round. But we won on the old and then lost on the new. You
were obviously playing at still a decent level then. I mean, that must have had an impact on your golf, as you say, if you didn't play that much in those 3 years. I mean, did you play for Scotland again after?
I did.
You did?
Yeah. So I came back and it took a while to get get back into it, and then just sort of played all the various tournaments that I needed to, and Scottish and such like. And
yeah, people that played at that level, I've been one of them. You've always got somebody that you beat that went on to bigger and, as I say, bigger and better things. Have you got somebody like that? I mean, I'm going to brag for a second. I once beat Gordon Brand Jr. in the Scottish Amateur. What would be your moment, or is there one? You're looking at me as if there isn't one. Come on.
No, I'm not sure that there was. When I did come back from caddying, I played Beanie, Katrina, in, I think we were at Prestwick St Nicholas, or one in the Scottish, and as I say, this was me just back from caddying, and I was probably 2 up with 6 to play, right. and I lost, but. And I should have won, but I wasn't much fit. But she was always classier.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know that I ever head to head beat anyone that went on and did anything. I'm trying to think of any of the English girls and maybe some of the home internationals and such like, but. Nobody of particular. It is. I'm sorry.
You've gone down in my estimation suddenly. Anyway, let's move on from the caddying. I think your new life, if I can call it that, is we're sitting here in the clubhouse at Muirfield the week of the British Women's Open, or the Women's Open, I should say. They don't use the word British, and you're a member. You're a member of the Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers. Run me through that process. How did that come about first?
Well, it came about from, as I suppose a lot of people know, the vote ultimately that was yes to admit women members, which, what a great result that was, and a great thing to happen. And well, I live in Edinburgh, which is just up the road, and also a member at Gullen, which is right next door. And so when they admitted women, didn't know a huge number of members here, but there was one member who's a sort of family friend, and shortly after the vote, and he sort of said,
was he your proposer?
Yes, yeah, and he said, is it something that you would be interested in, Lindsay? Because you can't apply for membership. You have to be invited to, which is always an amusement for a lot of people. But actually, having gone through the process, I would say I'm an advocate of it, because the club has got its nuances, and it's a foursomes club. And actually, if you just want to come here, play with your friends and play your own ball, it's not the place for you. You won't get out of the club everything that there is to get out of it. Right. You won't enjoy it to any great extent. So that's why I think they acknowledge their history, their tradition, and want to maintain that within trying to modernise and keep up with today. So I was lucky enough that somebody did.
And when did you get in?
So we're last summer, July 2021.
Oh. And well, what's it like to be a member?
It's fantastic.
It's a basic question, but it seems the obvious one, yeah.
So the obvious is the golf course. I can play that whenever I want, which is, it's phenomenal. It
might be the best course in the world.
Well, according to a lot of people,
it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just down the road. And as you say, we're looking out over it now, and it just is stunning. So that is, it's just an absolute privilege to be able to do that. But equally, the club and the membership it's fantastic. They're so friendly. I mean, I know it's been called the opposite by a lot of people, but actually, the membership is incredibly inclusive and friendly, and it's but also what's lovely about it is you go out and you play, and if you play in a club match or something that you've organised from a dinner, there's lots of chat about the golf, but nobody's interested in, I was really unlucky at the third, it just rolled into the right hand bunker. All the stuff that we all roll our eyes at and go, how boring is this person? But they want to hear stories, but something with a bit of humour to it. So that's really, really refreshing, and just great fun.
Describe for the people who might not be as familiar with it. I mean, I know a bit about it. The social side of being a member. You know, the dinner matches and that kind of thing, which is a kind of old-fashioned concept, but it still goes on here and it seems to work.
It does. It does. So what's interesting, I think, at the moment, when you look at what's going on with golf, and we were talking about growing the game of golf, and you know, in the R&A, you know, are talking about that around now, but equally, it has got a long history and tradition, and I don't think we should forget about preserving the game of golf either. You know, that's important. And a lot of golf clubs are struggling in the clubhouses. You know, the members don't go in and, you know, just play their golf and jump in the car and they drive back home again. I was down here a couple of weeks ago, and because I've been involved with the AIG Women's Open, and we were looking just to have a kind of quick sandwich lunch, you know, to take in to the room where we had the meeting. And they said, oh God, you know, sorry, it could take a wee while. We've got 90 people for lunch today. That's members. Yeah. That's members that have been out playing golf. And that's just on a members day. And there's this big tradition about coming in, and they talk about 2.5 hours for golf, 2.5 hours for lunch, and then another 2.5 hours, you know, to go back out.
Well, it's an old line, but they once described to me by who was a member here, he said it's a lunch club with a golf course attached. There's some truth to that, isn't there?
No, absolutely. A lot of members do talk about that and do see it as that. But over and above that sort of golf, that there is, I don't know how many club dinners there are throughout the year, but these are black tie dinners and, you know, formal events. But when you arrive and have some drinks beforehand, you go either with your diary or your bit of paper with the dates that you're available, and you organise club matches, and you try to get, so there's no shots for any of these club matches, and you have to try and get, you know, a like match. So obviously these are 36-hole foursomes matches, and you arrange these at the club dinner, and you've got to arrange them and play them before the next dinner.
Right.
And so as a new member, once you've organised these matches, you stand up at the dinner once everybody sits down, and you ask the captain if he will give your approval for playing that match, and then everybody bets on these matches.
Ah, right, okay.
So
is there a league table for these matches, unofficial or official?
Well, what there is every single club match that has been played and it is recorded, and it goes way back to 1744, and they're handwritten in beautiful writing and ink and fountain pens, and so there is that tradition to it. But boy, they're competitive, and especially, you know, off scratch. So
are you winning most of them?
No.
Can you beat most of the men? I would imagine you beat most of them, but not all. There'll be a few good players here, I'm sure.
Yes, there are. But there's also coping with that pressure. You know the caddies have bet on it. You know that members that were at the dinner have bet. So there is, you know, there's a bit of expectation. So I have found this new pressure on my golf, which is a work in progress. It's also a work in progress having a couple of glasses of wine at lunch and going out and playing golf, having never done that as a kind of playing amateur. So that's new.
Well, I once played here when I was at Stirling University. We had a match against the Honourable Company, foursomes in the morning, the lunch, and then foursomes in the afternoon. And we did all right in the morning. It was quite close at lunch, and they just got us tanked up over lunch. And I can remember driving off the first tee over there and not feeling the ball come off the club. And we got murdered in the afternoon. I mean, these guys knew what they were doing.
They've got form on that, particularly university sides, and because all the young guys, they come over and they're loving it because, you know, they say there's no such thing as a free lunch, and there isn't, because they win the match, don't they?
Yeah. What else? What other aspects of the club culture, if you like, would be interesting to people or surprise people, or surprised you?
Well, as somebody, so the process to being elected as a member it's not overly quick. So you start to get an insight to that, because you come and play with various members, and then they'll write letters of support for you. So you start to get a bit of a feel. I probably didn't get as much as other people because of COVID. And so there was a lot of restrictions about being able to have lunch and all of that. I think they're genuinely interested in you as a person. It's not just about golf, and but people really are, like I said, sort of keen to meet you as a member and to know who other members are. And it's nice, some people might call it a bit old fashioned, but actually when you look at what we've been through around COVID and isolation and not seeing people and some of the mental health or otherwise struggles, this is a place where, I'm sure there's people that have been widowed and they come regularly and they'll have their lunch and they just have this blanket of friendship around all these other members that, makes their day.
Yeah. How have they handled, I've just written a story about it, so I was really quite impressed with how they've handled the aftermath of the first vote and all the rest of it. They've really made a big effort to be more inclusive, and certainly in gender stakes. How do you think that job has been done, and what's been your experience of it?
So
and how much have you played a role in that?
Yeah. So I think, obviously I wasn't here back in 2013, the Open, but I think a lot of the members would say they were surprised at the backlash when there was the no vote.
And it was global.
It was. And I think they were surprised that people bothered, cared, whatever you want to call that, and realised, okay, we've got a role to play in all of this. And then following from all of that and really looking at themselves as a club, as a membership, how they portrayed themselves to the wider public, they realised that actually they'd let the media, I think, remember somebody saying to me, they'd let the media just fill the gaps. They didn't speak to the media and they let them fill the gaps how they wanted to. So they
became
made their
walking
stories.
cliches and stereotypes.
Exactly. So decided on, I suppose, partly on the back of being awarded the AIG Women's Open, coming here, thought, okay, we've got a story to tell. And we have got this great golf course. We've also got this great golf club that is steeped in history. The Honourable Company paid a third of the claret jug. It's got a huge, we've got down there, we've got the oldest trophy that there is in golf. We've got it was the Honourable Company that wrote the first 13 article rules of golf, so they've got a massive role to play, and decided, okay, we're going to invite the media in, and we don't have any skeletons now, we've included women. Come and see for yourself at what we've done. And women members are just, we go to dinners, we play in the same events as the men, we play in these club matches, and please do come and see and see for yourselves and tell the world.
Yeah, I think we've now reached a stage where, where we are right this minute was the stories that were written, mine included, had to include a look back at what had been before. But from now on, that's been done. To me, they'll be looking forward far more than looking back, which is clearly what they want. And as I say, I've been impressed by everything they've been. If they're not doing what they're saying, they're very good actors, the people I've talked to. It seems sincere. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would concur with that. Once the decision was taken, it was right. Well, if we're going to do this, as they do everything else here, we're going to do it properly, and it's not going to be tokenism. It's if we're going to have women members, they've got to be members just the way anybody else is, and that's why we're not called women members. No. We're just members, just the same as anybody else.
Yeah. How does your husband feel about your membership? I have to add, and I know John. He was at university at the same time as me, the same university. So I'm interested to hear what his reaction has been to all of this.
I think He's delighted. He's absolutely delighted. And there's probably an element of pride of his wife getting in one of the first few. It's not a bad gig for him either.
No,
We can toddle down of an evening when, not a breath of wind, the sun's shining, and go out and play, as you say, as a lot of people think, one of the best golf courses in the world. So there are no downsides to it, really.
We're getting close to the finish of this. We've covered, the different aspects of your life. What's next? Is there anything next? Yes, there is. I am going to work harder at my long putts. When this tournament is over, I'm going to dedicate practice time to getting my. Well, there's a lovely practice putting green out there. It's perfect.
Exactly. There's no excuse.
Yeah,
no excuse.
Yeah, I remember that. In mixed foursomes and days gone by, being a little bit worried whenever I left it 35 feet from the hole, shall we say.
Some of the looks that I maybe got from Howard Clark were akin to the look on your face when I've left it.
It was just fear,
15
mostly.
Short.
But anyway, on that happy note, Lindsey, thank you very much for your time. It's been enjoyable talk.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Two perspectives we don't really hear enough of wrapped up in one interview there. Excellent stuff from John Huggan and Lindsey Garden. Now, I hope you've made sure to press the follow button in your favourite podcast app, because on our next episode, we're taking a look at how golf can play an important role in improving the lives of people with dementia and other debilitating conditions.
The experience can actually take place just on a putting green, a practice area, so you don't have to have that full, what we would call golf experience. You can tailor it to the individual as they go through their challenge with their diagnosis, so that you can keep it in their lives for longer. And I think golf is perfectly placed because it's a sport you can enjoy from cradle to grave. And as I say, Rod, till you pop your clogs.
That's Tony Blackburn from England's Golf in Society next time on The Thing About Golf.